Now we're going to take a look at how to read chord symbols. And so this is bringing us into a whole new area of piano playing. Instead of just reading the notes, you're going to be improvising part of what the song is. And so we're going to be looking at the melody and playing the melody as is. We're going to be reading chord symbols that are written above where the melody is, on the staff where the melody is, and creating different ways of playing that left hand. So let's get started. The first song we're going to look at is a simple English folk song called Lavender Blue. And as you notice right up above, each one at the beginning of each measure, I've circled them in yellow, the chord symbols. They're representing what the chords we're going to be playing underneath. And because where it's lined up, where the rhythm of the melody is, that tells you where you're going to start playing that chord. And as I said, this is a very simple English folk song, and we are in the key of D major with our 2 sharps, and we're playing the 1. This is the 4/6/4 chord, only written in chord symbols. The G/D or G over D tells us we're playing a G chord with a D on the bottom. And there's our 4/6/4 chord again, which if we name it by the letter names, it's a G with a D at the bottom. That's the lowest note. And then our other one is the 5/6/5 chord, and that is an A7 chord, but we're playing in an inversion that creates the C sharp on the bottom. So let me play that first way for you with just a simple blocked chord underneath. To take a look at a second way to do it. Now remember that because the chord symbols are up above here, there's countless ways that you can create that left hand as long as you stay in the format of the particular chord that they're requesting of you. So this time, instead of playing a blocked chord, we're going to play the bottom note and then the top 2 together. So it'll sound like this. That's how you would do it the second way of breaking the chord apart. Now let me show you another way. This would be another way of doing that D major chord, and instead of playing it, we call it blocked when you play it all together. Now we're going to say what we call broken, playing one note at a time. Notice that our time signature is 3/4, so we could go 1, 2, 3. So let's hear how that sounds with a broken chord in the left hand. And so now, as I mentioned, there are countless ways to do this, so let's try it another way. Now, this other way is a little more challenging, and so we had again, we're in the key of D major, so there's our D major chord. But what if we kept that D major chord and we put a D major chord an octave lower? And I am just doing that with 2 hands to show you that. But we're going to drop this 3rd note, and we're just going to play this with your 5th finger, your 2nd finger. Your thumb is going to go here with the left hand, and then it's going to cross over with your 3rd finger, and then your thumb is, so your left hand is going to play the 2 octave chords only with the left hand. Here's the bottom triad, then we're starting with the top triad, crossing over with your 3rd finger and to your thumb. Let me show you that one more time. Here's the D chord, and then the octave, cross over with 3, 1. Now we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 notes to play, and we want to squeeze them into that 3, 4, so probably in 8th notes. 1 and 2 and 3 and. Now, we have noticed that in this measure 3, we have a D in the bass, but because we're getting a little fancy here, we're going to just look at the first letter of the chord symbol. And so when we get to there, we're going to do that same pattern on a G chord. Let's see how it looks like in a G chord. Here's our G major chord, but we're leading off that middle note. So the left hand is going to play that up a 5th, up an octave, and then it's going to cross over with a 3rd finger again. And so it's 1 and 2 and 3 and 1, 2. Let me show you one more chord, our 5-6-5 chord, which is an A7 chord with a C sharp in the bass. We're going to ignore the C sharp on the bass and just play it in root position. The 7th on top of the A, we're going to ignore that just to keep our pattern simple. And so here's our A major chord, our A major chord. We're going to leave off that middle note there. We're going to play it with your 2nd finger here, the octave with your thumb, crossing over. Let me show you that one more time on A. Okay, let's take a look or take a listen to Lavender Blue in this 4th way that we're playing with these broken octave chords. And now we're going to look at one final way to do this. And again, as I mentioned before, there's countless ways to play this, but today we're just going to look at 5 different ways to execute, or actually to realize, the chord symbols that you'll find over so many pieces of music. So this time, the left hand is just going to play the root of these chords, not this one, but the root, just the simple root. The left hand's going to play one simple note of that root. If you want to get a little bit more fancy, you could play it at the octave, but for now we're just playing that D note for the root. Now the right hand is going to have another little job to it. Instead of just playing the melody, every time there's a chord symbol, the right hand is going to add a note that is part of that chord below the melody note. So we have a D major chord, and here's our D major chord. The melody is already taking the D, so we don't need to do that. So I can either add an F sharp or an A underneath it. The F sharp, the 1, 3, 5, it's best to choose the 3rd of the chord if possible, but the 5th can work as well. You just don't want to repeat exactly the same note as the melody note. So again, we're going to pick one of the notes of the chord, one of the notes of this chord, one of the notes of each chord, and place it underneath the melody in the right hand just to add a different variation to it, while the left hand is either playing a single note of the root or it's playing the octave. So here we go with this one, just on beat 1 of each measure for this example. So by doing this, you're creating your own arrangements of this. And as I mentioned, there's countless ways of doing this as long as you follow diligently that chord symbols that are written above the staff.